and our parents Bert and Gladys. I was born in January 1938. My sister Thelma in November 1939, a few months after war broke out. I hadn't been back for a while, not since they put up a blue plaque saying I was born there. It's one of those Victorian houses, built around 1850, big bay windows on the front. We only had 2 rooms. My mother's bedroom, then down some stairs, a long, narrow kitchen you couldn't swing a cat in. There were loads of families living in the house. You shared a toilet. There was a bathroom on every floor. When I got there that day with Fenton and James, we saw the door open. There was a police cordon at the top of those stairs, and a policewoman guarding it, saying it was a crime scene and she couldn't disclose what had happened. I could imagine our old room, not much different, where the crime had taken place. From the street, the curtains still looked the same. It looked really shitty. Same broken low wall, probably the original fence. The privet hedge had been trimmed. Back then, they grew so far out over the pavement you had to tiptoe around them not to walk in the gutter. The war was no problem for me. When you're a little kid, you don't know it's a war. You just think it's normal. It's not scary. You hear the bombs, but you don't think you're going to die. I was 2 when the Blitz started, and the wailing air raid sirens and the ack-ack of the anti-aircraft guns were the soundtrack of my life. Going to the brick shelter in the garden every night was routine. From September 1940, they bombed London for 56 nights without stopping, mostly in the East End. Stepney got the worst of it. Lord Haw-Haw, I read since then, had promised to smash Stepney. The theory was that Stepney got so bombed by the Germans because Hitler thought all the Jews were there. There were lots of Jews in the East End then. Everyone was Jewish or Irish. There was nobody else. Almost my first visual image was of sides of houses gone. The inside, outside. There'd be paintings hanging, and mirrors, and a fridge hanging on a ledge or a bed there. It was like opening a doll's house. The other soundtrack, along with the sirens, was the crunch of broken glass. I remember coming into the hallway, and everything was covered in glass. The windows blown in. They always had brown tape stuck over them, so that the glass stuck together when they broke. But this time, the force of the nearby explosion must have been too great. I was fascinated by the noise made when you walked on glass. The sound of that crunch, crunch. Later, playing on bomb sites, I liked smashing it. I still jump when I hear a bang. Once, when there was a bang, I dragged my sister underneath the table because that's what I had been told to do, and I was a hero for about 2 weeks. But they soon forgot. We were living at Walwood Road when my father brought home a Tonka toy that was being passed around all his East End mates. My dad said I must be restrained with my playing and not damage or scratch it, as the next day it was going to another little boy to play with for one evening. Or to a girl, I suppose. I imagine boys because boys counted more than girls in those days. It was red and maybe yellow, strongly made of tin, with a small crane on the back. I had never seen anything like it. It almost seemed like a holy relic. Toys were scarce in the war, even on the black market. I also remember finding a little lead soldier or sailor in a pea jacket. I loved this thing so much. One day my mother was doing the ironing, and I stood him on top of the iron to see what would happen, and it melted into a blob. There goes my sledge, my rosebud, like in Citizen Kane. It turned into a ball and rolled onto the floor. The first tragic thing I really remember. Much worse than Hitler's bombs. Did I cry? No, I didn't cry. Boys didn't cry in the East End. They'd think you were a fucking wimp. That was sad, though, my rosebud. I didn't realise it was rosebud until much later. One day in 1942, when I was 4, we climbed out of the shelter to find the house next door bombed out. If you look now to the right of our house, you'll see the council house that replaced it. We were moved to East Ham. My mother's sister Dolly and Uncle Tom, her husband, who was a pub pianist and worked in a wood factory, moved in with us in Hayham Road, a smallish house, later Victorian style, built about 1880, with bay windows framed with decorative stucco pilasters. They had their 2 kids,